All right, Karthik, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. I've just requested access to share my screen. So, if you can give me access to share my
Sure.
screen.
Maybe
Okay, I
sure.
do have it now.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
perfect. All right. I just have a few slides, nothing major, just to kind of anchor our story a little bit. And I'm definitely not a design person, so I don't want to. I won't be using too much design lingo in the whole thing to not like make a fool of myself. But I think I can talk a little bit about the things we have learned in the process of building Envision, right? And sort of how that applies to our thinking about accessibility and understanding how we can actually or rather if I was to build anything else after Envision, these are some of the principles that I would take over with me when working on that, especially if I'm working on whatever is the cutting edge of technology at that time, right? So that was the perspective with which I approached this particular talk. And there'll be some time for Q&A, so I'm happy to dive into specific things about Envision and our journey as well at that time. So I've got a slide here in front of me. It says designing at the edges, how building for blind users taught us to create better products for everyone. So I just want to talk about the origins of Envision. So Envision started in 2017, actually, late to 2016. The idea for Envision came when me and my co-founder went to a blind school in India to talk to kids about what it means to be a designer or what it means to be a researcher. So at that time, one of my friends mother, she had a blind school in India. And they were primarily catering to students from high school students who were just going to graduate high school and go into college. So it was also into vocational training and all of those things as well. um, the thing is, when we went there to give a talk to these kids, about what it means to be a designer or a researcher, the main sort of goal with us going there was to just tell these kids that a designer or a researcher is just somebody who solves problems for a living, right? So that's basically what our whole topic of the workshop was. And the idea was to try and help students there answer what kind of problems would they like to solve when they grow up. And I remember the night before, I asked my 12-year-old nephew what kind of problems would he like to solve when he grew up. And he gave me the kind of answers that you would expect from an imaginative teenager, right? So he was talking about building cities on the moon, or building a rocket ship that would go to Mars, and so on. And I kind of expected similar answers from the kids in that particular school as well. But when I actually went to this blind school, and when we gave this talk and we asked these kids what kind of problems would they like to solve when they grow up, the answers they gave was so different from what I heard other kids their age talk about, that it was it was very shocking. Because the answers they gave were like, oh, I would like to read a book by myself. I want to just be able to someday, their aim was to be able to live independently. Or they said, hey, I really want to have a career as like an engineer, building a civil engineer, but I don't think I can do that because I'm blind or low vision, right? People wanted to be able to, like, say, do very simple things like go out by themselves, and live by go out independently, take a bus, go to the beach when it's sunny, and so on. Again, those are things that sighted people took for granted on a daily basis, that a lot of these blind and low vision kids will spend considerable time and energy into, like, overcoming those hurdles, right? And so that was the basis for Envision. So we started to, like, spend time with the kids there. And my co-founder, at that time, he was just on a break from his master's course in the Netherlands, and and he came back, and he started to talk to a lot of blind and low vision youngsters and kids in Holland. And so that gave us a very complete picture of the problems, not just the young blind and low vision kids face, but also people of all ages spend a considerable amount of time overcoming basic barriers. And we realized the reason why a lot of these people aren't independent is because they don't have access to information around them. So a blind or low vision person is not able to understand what train or what platform they're in, simply because they can't read what platform number is in front of them. And so that was the starting point for us to think about how to use AI to solve these problems, because AI at that time back in 2017 was starting to get better at certain tasks like being able to read text, being able to recognize faces. They were starting to get better than humans at these tasks, right? And another really cool thing about AI is it doesn't expect the world to change, in the sense that it can, it can take the world as it is as input and work with it. I know, and if the traditional way of making something accessible is to put like a braille display on things or to do those kind of things, and we realize that that particular solution doesn't scale, whereas AI can actually consume the world the way it is and help people get access to this information. So that was where, one of the first lessons we learned was really just about immersing ourselves. I think we spent, from the time Envision as an idea began in December of 2016 till the time it actually started off as a company almost by accident in September of 2017, I think we had spoken to more than 1,000 blind and low vision people, right? And there's just two of us talking to people in forums, talking to people one on ones, doing, just talking to them about their experiences and try to understand like what it meant to be someone who is blind or low vision. And I think that's one of the key lessons I still take to this day is when we start working on something new, we always spend a lot of time talking and trying to live with the people who are having these problems, right? And so that's when we started to, build Envision, and we looked at what are the different problems we'd like to solve. And the whole process, again, this is a very design term that I didn't understand at the beginning, but as I started to build Envision out with my co-founder, who's an industrial designer, and the design team at Envision, I realized what co-creation meant, right? We actually had people come to our, we'd go to their, to their homes, or we'd ask them to come to the university. We'll sit down with them and we'll show them what we actually built the day before. And they'll give us feedback. They'll say, hey, this is what works, this is what doesn't work. And over the course of like, I would say from September 2017, when we actually started Envision as a company, we started to gather feedback from all of these, different blind or low vision people. And we started to build the app along with them. And initially in our heads, we kind of took a lot of, I would say, wrong turns, right? So, being an engineer, I thought in the beginning that a lot of people would be very fascinated by the idea of getting very detailed descriptions of what's happening around them, right? And we put a lot of emphasis on building an AI even back in like 2018, that, if you take a picture, it gives you like a 3 or 4 sentence description of what it sees, including the color of the table. For example, if you're looking at a scene in a room, it would give you the color of the table, it would give you all of that information. And a lot of blind and low vision users felt that it was very gimmicky, whereas the actual problem they wanted us to solve was being able to read text. And that was something that I kind of learned, when we first launched the product, right? A lot of people they didn't really care about the scene description function at all. Like the whole being able to read text was like a function we didn't put much attention into, but it got more than 100 times the usage that, we thought the scene description function would get. And that was the first lesson I learned, was you have to be very careful about like not solving the wrong problems. And the whole co-creation process, eventually helped us to kind of zero in on the fact that reading text was the number one problem that blind or low vision people cared about. Like it's the only reason why people to this day, they pay Envision a good chunk of money only to be able to read the text around them no matter on what surface they're on. And that's the kind of company that we've also built. Is we do other things like being able to recognize faces or being able to get descriptions, but essentially reading text is the main problem that, that blind or low vision people want us to solve for them, right? And it also taught me a lot about how, because I'm not the customer, because I'm not the one that's using the product at the end of the day. It's not, okay on my behalf to assume that this is what the customer would actually want us to solve. And especially this makes sense when you're building something for accessibility, because unless you're somebody who is yourself in some way part of the the disability community, it's important to not assume that that this is the particular way to solve the problem, or this is the type of problem to actually solve, or these are the valid set of approaches that we should take to solve a problem. And the way we actually work nowadays with Envision at Envision is every month or every couple of months we have something called the Envisioners Day. So Envisioners Day is we bring people from different walks of life, different age groups. We sit them down and we show them what we're actually building. Now that we have a better intuition on what direction the product should go, we show them prototypes. We actually do. Another design term I learned is Wizard of Oz testing. We do a lot of Wizard of Oz testing with the users, and we obsessively note things down. If we have features that we already have built, but then we want to get more feedback, we usually pair a designer and an engineer and a user together in a room, and then we have the engineers almost live tweaking the tool to actually suit or to test it with different users, right? For example, very recently we worked on a feature that allows a blind person to kind of that allows that helps a blind person know how to hold the document in their in front of the glasses before they can take a picture. Now usually when you're wearing smart glasses like these, if you're someone who is sighted, you can very easily know where to hold a document in order to take a picture, right? You kind of hold it up right here, and but if you're a blind or low vision person, sometimes if you're someone who's blind since birth, you don't have an idea of what orientation to, like, where to hold the document. Some people hold it here, some people hold it here, some people hold it way below. And the problem with that is you can't really like you end up with taking images that only capture maybe 5% of the text on the document, or like 50% of the text, right? So we built an AI that kind of tells the blind person, okay, move the document up, move the document to the left a little bit, move it a little bit to the back, and then when all four edges of the document are in frame, it captures a picture automatically, right? So that AI, we actually sat down with customers who had come during the Envisioners Day. We actually paired an engineer, designer, and a customer together in a room, and they just tried three or four different variations of the model. So some versions of the model would be really sensitive, some versions of the model would not be so sensitive, and we kind of figured out what the sweet spot is by just sitting down with the customer, showing them the model, and iterating with them in real time, based on their feedback, right? So that's one specific example of how we tend to co-create with customers nowadays. And the roots of it was in our early days, when we thought that a very fancy technology like getting you a description of a scene was more important than reading text, only to know that all the customers were like using the reading text functionality 10 times more than that. And as an engineer, for me, it was kind of heartbreaking, because I was like, I spent like 8 weeks on this thing and I thought it was really cool. But then for customers, it was like they really don't care, So I think that's something I learned from that experience. So when we first started building, Envision the app, again, just talking to a lot of customers, we realized that holding a phone in one hand and a cane or a guide dog in the other hand and having to use the app was not the best experience. And in fact, one of the outcomes of my co-founder's master's thesis was he found out that blind or low vision people have much better head orientation than they have hand orientation, right? And this was also validated by a lot of customers, because when we launched the Envision app and asked people to pay for it, they were happy to pay for it, but they were like, I really don't like the experience of doing this, holding the phone in one hand and a cane or a guide dog in the other hand and pointing it around. And that's a really cumbersome experience. So they wanted us to put Envision on some kind of a wearable. And so that's what we also like started to look down into. So since 2018, we started exploring what smart glasses options were out there. And we tried a bunch of them. And again, just talking to customers, we realized that the two main important aspects were: one, the glasses have to look normal, because most of the smart glasses out there were not, you know, back in 2018, 2019. This is before the Ray-Ban Metas, before, all of the glasses that you see today. Um, the AI, the smart glasses have to be sleek. They have to be presentable, because again, for someone who's blind or low vision, they already know they attract a lot of attention when they walk into a room. So for a blind person, they have a cane in their hand. They walk, with a certain gait sometimes. So it's very obvious to them that people are looking at them. So they want to have technology on them that doesn't feel very obtrusive, which is also one of the reasons why, every year, somebody or the other sends me these vests that people can wear, which can detect obstacles in front of them. People spend, a lot of very enthusiastic students and professionals and engineers, they spend so much time building these really very high tech, very cool belts to detect obstacles, and jackets that detect obstacles, or like headgear that helps them see and stuff like that. And nobody buys them, not because the technology is bad, but because it really makes the blind person look like a cyborg, right? And nobody wants to look like a cyborg, especially when there's already so much attention on you. And that's again, something that people, from engineers and technologists, they don't realize that for most people, they just want to look good as much as, blind people want to look good as much as a sighted person does, right? They're very conscious of how the world perceives them. So we wanted to look out for smart glasses that would not make a blind person feel even more, uh, you know uh, like draw more attention. And the glasses also have to have enough firepower in them to be able to run our AIs offline. Again, something I also noticed is a lot of people in the blind and low vision community tend to be folks who are not very economically well off. Again, when you're designing accessibility solutions, I also realized how important it is to pay attention to the socioeconomic background of your audience as well, right? A lot of times, in the beginning when I built, Envision, a lot of the assumption that we had was, everybody's going to have like 200 megabyte internet speeds, so I can put really state of the art models in the in our cloud, and we can stream, HD video directly from these glasses or from these phones over to our servers, and we can have real time AI interpreting the environment and all this fancy technology. And you realize, even in countries like the US or the UK or Europe, a lot of blind and low vision people still, live either on state subsidies. They find a lot of trouble finding work, right? So it's important for, whatever we built, we realized it also had to work offline, because people don't have great internet speeds. And especially if you want your work to actually have an impact, you need to also take into consideration that a lot of people in the blind and low vision community also live outside, so-called tier one countries, right? So in a country like India, you don't have, like, at least until recently, you didn't have great internet speeds, you didn't have like great network connectivity all the time. So we had to, pick a pair of smart glasses, or take an approach that was also offline first, right? So we partnered with Google. We won the Google Play Award in 2019 for the best accessibility experience. So I kind of used that as, like, shamelessly used that as a calling card to, like, like, knock on every Google person's door when I was in Mountain View in their office to collect the award, to kind of ask if anyone's working on any kind of AI, smart glasses or anything of that sort. And after, like, 4,000 NDAs, they basically let me take a pair of the Google Glass 2 that they were building. So the first Google Glass was a consumer facing version. The second Google Glass was more an enterprise facing version. It was meant for companies like DHL and FedEx, who have a lot of, factory floor workers who are scanning packages hundreds of times a day. And they were like, oh, just put on a pair of glasses, and then you can scan them hands free. That was the idea that they had. But then we pitched the idea of the Envision glasses to them, and they really liked it. And we shipped what I think is the first, sort of proper AI glasses for the accessibility community back in 2020, right? And people loved it. It was very expensive though. It was about 2,500 dollars for a pair of glasses. And that was also something I realized while building AI glasses, is how the economics of the industry as well work with accessibility. Because I also realized with accessibility that there's no direct way to reach the consumers, because the consumers don't pay for the glasses themselves. You have to either get through government subsidies. You have to factor, the time it takes to go to market is very, very different from the time it takes other products in other industries to get to market, right? There's no like direct way to go. Like for example, in one state in the US, you have to go through the vocational rehabilitation centers. In the other states in the US, it's a different approach. In Europe, every country has a different insurance system, so you have to go through different insurance systems to be able to reach the customers. And all of that tends to really bloat the cost of an assistive technology product, right? And I'll kind of talk about how this is going to change in the next couple of years. And I believe that that is coming. So I'll talk about it towards the end. And so another really interesting thing we realized was a lot of elderly people were using the Envision glasses when they came out. So they were not essentially people who are blind or low vision, but they were just elderly folks who wanted to be able to read text or be able to do other kinds of tasks that someone who's losing sight would do. And that was when the second inflection point happened, because we got early access to GPT-4 Vision from OpenAI back in 2023, almost a good, I would say, 6 months before they launched. The main reason was basically they wanted us to test accessibility of these models. Can they be used for accessibility purposes? And but what I found very interesting with that particular, the whole LLM revolution that's happening right now, is LLMs are great as chatbots, but they also, fundamentally changed the way people who are not very tech savvy, the elderly or people who are blind or low vision, but then they're not very well versed with technology. So it changed the way these people interact with software, right? So usually when you think about any software that we use nowadays, it basically has a menu, and then it has a menu structure, and you learn that, okay, I go, if I want to like change or share my screen, there is a toolbar and I click on it, and then I select share, and then I pick a particular window and stuff like that. But most consumer software even today is not accessible. You'll be shocked when you go on a website how many websites don't have accessibility labels on them, right? And even a tool like the Envision glasses or the Envision app, which really had a lot of accessibility built into it, the elderly folks found it very hard to use. Whereas with these LLMs, not only can they chat with you, they can also now call different tools to actually use, based on what you ask it, right? And so that was the starting point for us to think about building a new product which does everything that the Envision glasses, the Envision app does, but without any menus whatsoever. So that was the starting point for Ally, which is an AI agent that's specifically built for accessibility. It does everything like being able to read text or recognizing faces, recognizing objects, and all of that stuff, but it does it through a very simple, natural conversational interface. So it's a bit like ChatGPT, but built entirely around the needs of a blind or low vision person, right? For example, a ChatGPT might not recognize a face for you. You can't teach ChatGPT to recognize faces. It won't do it for quote unquote privacy reasons, right? ChatGPT might not, for example, read certain types of text for you, or the Meta AI on the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, they won't read certain bits of text for you because it thinks that particular text is, has personal information or is sensitive. None of these AI solutions work offline. Whereas something like Ally can basically do all of these things that a blind or low vision person needs, right? And that is possible because of the AI revolution that we are in today, where these models are not just good at having a conversation, but also understanding the intent behind your actual ask and pick the right tools for you. And this is what I think is the future of accessibility, right? I think assistive technology as an industry probably won't exist in the next 5 years. A lot of the reasons why that is one, I think wearables are going mainstream. We're seeing a lot of companies now building glasses, like even Envision. We partnered with a mainstream company called Solos to build something called the Ally Solos glasses, and it looks like any other pair of glasses, right? It looks like the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, but the only thing is that it comes with an SDK that lets developers like us build apps on top of them, right? And these glasses, compared to the Envision glasses, which was at $2,500, these basically cost like $500, right? So the dramatic drop in price, and there's also more and more of these glasses going mainstream. Like we know, Google's building them, Meta's already building the Ray-Ban glasses. We have early access to the developer kit, and I can tell you that a lot of the apps that you use on your phone will eventually be on these smart glasses as well. At the same time, I think the current AI revolution that's happening, that's making it very easy for people to customize, the layouts of their apps more easily. People can get more things done from having a conversation than having to like build or have access to specialized assistive technology software in order to be able to do that. So I think assistive technology will still remain as a niche, but I think the amount of effort that you will have to put in order to make something accessible, that would decrease over time. And also, I think a company like Envision, that's so far building specialized assistive technology products, what we are doing ourselves is we are basically becoming a company that builds just you know tools that are aimed at the blind or low vision community or at accessibility in general, but then partnering with multiple hardware companies and kind of just going back to becoming a software first company, where we're just building apps on top of these different AI glasses that are going to happen over the course of time, right? So I think we're not building our own hardware, because I think a lot of the hardware is going to basically be built by companies, and we're just going to be building like the experience on these glasses for a blind or low vision person. um, so yeah, that's a little bit about our journey so far, where we're going, and some of the lessons that I've personally learned over the years. But yeah, I'll open up the floors for questions, and I'm more than happy to talk about that experience. So
That's awesome. It's really interesting to hear the working model that you all have created over time, especially with having that agile framework where it's you, the designer, the developer, the user, and you're building in real time. Did you all do this in the Netherlands or was this in the States?
so this was all in the Netherlands,
In the
so we
Netherlands.
built.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I thought. And I've
Yeah,
worked with some
but we
teams
also
there.
actually did. So we also do these things in the States as well. So every year, in March, there is something called CSUN, which is like it's a California State University Northridge Assistive Technology Conference. So
Hmm,
it's a full thing. But CSUN ATC is what it's called. It's basically like like the Woodstock for blind and low vision companies, assistive
awesome.
technology companies, and we kind of do that every year. We everybody comes from all over the world to attend it, and we actually do these sessions with people there as well. Yeah.
That is so great. Does anybody have any questions for Karthik? Wizard of Oz testing was mentioned when discussing co-creating with the user. I'm not familiar with this term. Could you explain?
Okay. Yeah. So I think I don't know the actual like design explanation for it, but essentially what it means is you are role playing the feature for the customer, and you're kind of like walking them through what the actual output is, right? To kind of get a sense of what the experience should be. Let me give you an example. So I gave you the example of how the AI was guiding a user on how to take a document, right? So we actually mimic this for a user. So before we actually built the AI for the customers, what we ended up doing was we had someone wear a pair of glasses, right? And we had a designer hold out a document in front of them, right? Or rather, we had the user hold the document in front of them, and the designer was actually giving the cues to the user on how to move the document, right? So that's when we realized how actually should the AI be built to give the guidance to users, right? So We said something in the beginning. We were giving them wrong cues, like, oh, move this to your away from you, or move this towards you, or move this at like 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock. We were trying to give clock hand directions first, and that didn't work out very well. And so we moved away from like clock hand directions to just giving them very simple ideas to, like, okay, move it to the left, move it to the right. But then some customers were moving it really fast. Some customers were moving it really slow, right? So we had to kind of figure out like a middle ground. And the designer was just speaking, sitting right next to the customer and kind of speaking out the cues to them. And then when the document was entirely in frame, the designer just tapped on the side of the glasses and it took a picture, right? So that was them literally simulating, the whole experience. And that's what the Wizard of Oz testing essentially is. Yeah.
Awesome. Hopefully, Quinn, that answers your question. I wanted to ask you, for participants, how did you all recruit those?
A lot of them were actually just our customers, like many of them. So what we would do is, before we, started off Envisioners Day, every Envisioners Day, uh, we already had a list of customers who we were in very close contact with. And usually people in the blind and low vision community, the thing I love about them the most is they're so vocal with their feedback, right? They really give
Right.
active feedback. They share a lot of their ideas with us. And so we kind of took those folks and then started putting them into like a bucket, right? And these are customers we knew kind of intimately. So we had around like 50 or 60 odd people like that. And what we would do is we just filter out the ones that are there in Europe, and then just send them an invitation and say, hey, come down to our office, right?
That's
And one of the most important thing with the with this whole thing was to figure out people from different walks of life,
mhm.
right? We didn't want to pick only the tech savvy ones. Like, we didn't want to pick only the ones who are not very tech savvy, or only the ones who are old and young. So we kind of handpick people just from different walks of life. Like, we picked a teacher, she was, who teaches like, young, blind and low vision kids. We picked someone who's like, going to college and has like a lot of experience with technology and is blind since birth. We also pick people with different levels of visual impairments, because it's always a spectrum. So there's some people who are like completely blind, some people who have, who are in early stages of retinitis pigmentosa, for example. And then put that group together and then invite them to the office and then spend a day with them. So
Mm.
that's usually the process that we follow. And yeah, it's just about picking people from different walks of life and ensuring that there is a healthy mix of genders and stuff like that.
Awesome. Elmo put in the chat, just speaking on observation, I'm not on the extreme side of the low vision spectrum, so I can still see pretty well, but I'm nearsighted. Phones like iPhones now have features like text to speech for images with text, like taking a picture of fast food menu sign, and you can have it read it to you. So going back to your point about being software first, and then
Yeah.
having those tools that support that is super important.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think a lot of accessibility features, you know, luckily, I would say, are going mainstream, right? Being able to recognize text, or being able to, detect faces, objects. These are things that are like becoming more and more mainstream. So Envision is always kind of like, working with a lot of these tools as well. For example, we do use the face metadata information that iPhone has, for example, to help people tag pictures when they share them with Envision, right? And so we also have features that rely on visual intelligence that Apple has released. But the main thing I always notice, and we all come back to often, is just being able to read all kinds of text, right? And some companies are still, I would say, I think for most mainstream companies, that's they're still behind a bit on being able to do that. And so yeah, that's where we put most of our focus on.
That's awesome. Any other questions? Anybody have anything they want to ask? There's something else in the chat. I'm not sure
Yeah,
who
right.
it is,
Yeah.
but talking about AI product interfaces,
Mm,
the limited features and
mm.
kind of the concern around how accessibility will be lost as you
True.
include more features.
Yeah, yeah. I think I definitely see that changing over the next couple of years. Like, I think the next wave with accessibility is definitely going to be generative UI. It's a little bit outlandish now to say that everybody will in the near future, like apps might not ship with one standard UI anymore, right? If someone wants to have explicit buttons and filters and sliders in order to be able to like tweak certain features of the apps, I think they would definitely be able to do that. And it's also something that we're exploring within Envision itself. Like, hey, okay, this is the interface for Ally, but then what if you want your buttons to be like much bigger, right? What if you want your buttons to be placed differently? What if you want the layout of your screen to accommodate your specific type of visual impairment, right? And in the past we'd have to ship a version of it every single time with code, but now you can generate that, or hopefully in the near future you can generate that on the fly, and have the UI be tweaked exactly to the way you want it to be for your own particular preferences. So yeah, I think one thing we really work on a lot is with the existing accessibility features of iPhone, and Android. For example, VoiceOver has a lot of these magic taps, magic gestures, rotors, that make it very easy for you to customize or build in additional customization without cluttering the UI too much, right? So for example, if we want to have a specific pause function, we don't need to build the pause button in the interface itself, but we can make it like a magic tap, right? Or we can add hints to buttons that makes it easy. Or we can kind of, if someone wants a much easier way of deleting a bunch of cells in a particular screen, we could just use a rotor, for example, to be able to do that, right? So all of these things, I feel like helps, adopting them kind of helps with accessibility.
And I had another question based on what you've seen in the past few years. How big of a market do you think there is for accessibility and the consideration of accessibility with customers in general?
Yeah, I think accessibility as a market is overall pretty big. I think with accessibility, the interesting thing is, I don't think accessibility companies as a whole, there would be a few, but I think not too many, because a lot of companies, especially as more and more, things like generative UI, all of that start going mainstream, I think accessibility gets baked into products more and more by default. So I think there is a pretty huge market for accessibility, considering the fact that a lot of people are aging, and that means that you have to build special accessibility concerns or take their accessibility concerns when you're trying to build a product. So it will definitely continue to grow as aging populations in countries in places like Europe or in countries like US and UK tend to grow. We have seen that pattern play out over the last few years of our existence. But I do think that more mainstream companies are waking up to the need for accessibility, and I feel like it will, we'll see more mainstream companies take it seriously. I know personally, companies like Meta, they're investing a lot into accessibility. Having said that, I always believe that single focus companies, like companies focused on accessibility, will always do a better job than what mainstream companies tend to do, because that's what their focus is. And
Right.
a company like Envision is a big example of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Krisanka brought up a great point about accessibility in art and museums.
Yeah.
So I know here in Dallas, the Dallas Museum of Art actually had some Braille, it was almost like Braille uh, replicates of some of the
Mm.
artwork hanging on the walls. And
Mm.
they also do some audio things. So she wanted you to talk more about that and where Envision is with the project because she saw something on LinkedIn about the correlation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a great question, actually. So the thing is, we started working or like when we started building Ally, we thought about what other areas can we actually take Ally to that could probably have an impact in the blind and low vision community. And when we started talking to a lot of our customers, they said that museums are one of the places that Ally can have a big impact on in terms of accessibility, right? And so our first, we spoke to the San Francisco, Museum of Modern Art. We spoke to the Asian Arts Museum, and then we spoke to, the San Francisco Museum of Craft and Design, right? So we spoke to these three, and we started a pilot project with two of them, the Asian Arts Museum and the San Francisco Museum of Craft and Design. And the idea was, how can we help a blind person experience art better, right? Because most of the times you can't touch the exhibits, you can't feel the exhibits, and most of the descriptions that a ChatGPT or a Claude would give for these artworks were very generic, and they were not always helpful for someone who's blind or low vision. So what we ended up doing was, we partnered with a community in San Francisco called the Blind Posse, and they actually advocate for improving accessibility of museums overall. And they have a guide that they've worked with us on as to how to actually describe an artwork to someone who's blind or low vision, right? So depending on their level of vision loss, the Ally can tweak its descriptions, for them. It starts off, for example, some of the things it does is, it starts off by describing, the texture of the artwork itself, right? It talks about the foreground, talks about the background. It has a very systematic way of describing the artwork, which a lot of blind and low vision people felt very useful. And so and we also worked with the museums. We collected the artworks. We taught Ally how to recognize the different artworks. So, a blind or low vision person could just simply stand in front of an artwork and then ask Ally, "Hey, Ally, can you describe this to me?" Right? And Ally would take a picture. It would know what artwork you're looking at, and then, be able to give you a description of the artwork, and you can ask follow up questions on it. So it's basically like an audio guide that you might purchase at a museum, but on steroids, right? So you don't get just one way information about, like a big information dump about the artwork itself. You can actually have a back and forth conversation about, oh, what do you mean by, like, if an artwork has wicker chairs, and like, oh, what's a wicker chair? I don't know what exactly is a wicker chair. And all the responses that Ally gives you always is, it gives you accessible description. So if you ask it what a wicker chair is, always keeps in mind that the person who's asking the question who is a blind or low vision person, and answers accordingly, right? And I have a video as well of the experience. I can paste it in the chat towards the end, about how different users actually perceived it, what was the experience they had. And for a lot of people, museums tend to be this place they don't visit, because they're not accessible, and they don't have a great experience in them, and they can't really follow along. But with Ally for museums, they absolutely loved, the experience, because it opened up a place that was otherwise inaccessible to them. It made it very accessible.
That's awesome. And I've been seeing a lot of organizations that are really being intentional, specifically with art galleries and museums and those types of institutions that are really trying to focus more on accessibility, whether it's, audio or visual. So I love seeing that, and I've been seeing so much more of it. So for the future of Envision and Ally, can you talk a little bit more about some things that you all are potentially looking at or experimenting with?
Yeah, sure. So I think, one of the things that, we are potentially that we're experimenting with right now. So one is, we're always working on different smart classes. I think it's a thing that we've been working on, and it's a thing that we see, becoming mainstream. So we're working with different smart classes providers. We're experimenting with classes as we speak. Another area that we're also experimenting with is how much of the web can we help make accessible, right? Because a lot of the web is inaccessible today. So for someone even filling out, for example, a form online, right? Most forms use JavaScript, and that's not very accessible for someone who's blind or low vision, right? For example, even picking a calendar, a date on a calendar on a web form tends to be quite inaccessible. And you have one of those very fancy type forms type nowadays where you enter one question at or answer one question at a time. All of those things tend to be inaccessible, and we're looking at ways where we can help a blind or low vision person complete these tasks autonomously on the web, right? So have an in-browser agent that basically, like, fills out forms for them or helps them navigate websites. So if they're on an Amazon and they want to be like, hey, can you like, check if this web page has like a particular product I'm looking for, right? Because I'm not able to find it with my with my screen reader, right? So offer assistance to screen reader, and eventually the aim is to see if we can replace screen readers as well. And we're also experimenting with bringing ally and its ally itself to more folks, or for example, we're working with people who are dyslexic. We're looking to work with the elderly. So I think the elderly and the dyslexic space is a big area of focus for us, or would be a big area of focus for us in the near future. But yeah, I think generally smart glasses going mainstream, along with the capability in the near future to build safe, accurate, autonomous agents that can help make the web accessible. Those are some of the areas that we're looking into.
That's awesome. It's very exciting to see all
Yeah.
this. Does anybody else have any questions? If not, we can go ahead and wrap up. Karthik, did you have anything additional you wanted to share or any final thoughts?
No, I think a lot of accessibility comes down from, I think the biggest lesson that I learned with building accessible solutions is to always, talk to customers more and more, especially given that, I'm not the core user, or I'm not someone who is at the center of this. But yeah, I think I'm just grateful for the chance to build something that has an impact. So that's it.
That's awesome. Well, we really appreciate you taking time today to meet with us and share your experience. And it's very exciting for everybody. I did put in the chat Karthik's LinkedIn and the website links. And we'll make sure this gets put onto YouTube so we can share it with everybody else. Again, Karthik, thank you so much. And we hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.